This is Appalachian Television Omni Media, improving America. 308, local Wasteland time. If you're listening, it means the world hasn't completely gone quiet yet. Signals are stubborn that way. They don't like ending on nothing. I think about that sometimes. How every voice needs a place to land. How a broadcast, without a listener, is just a wound in the air. Tonight's story isn't about ghosts, or monsters, or anything you can shoot. It's about someone who decided that if the world is going to end, it was going to end with her listening to it. They call her the listener in the tunnel. This one comes from a scav who favors the rail lines. Said they're honest. They only go where they go. And they never pretend to be something else. He was working the old subway near Morgantown one night. He was working the old maintenance path that peeled off from the main line. Rust on the railheads. Water running thin along the edges. Signs so faded that they were half rumor, half paint. He passed a marker stenciled on the wall. M-63. Emergency access. Someone had underlined it with a finger of soot. He told me the air changed there. Got heavier. Like the tunnel had thoughts. He heard a hum at the edge of things. Not quite a voice. Not just static. A shape of talking. Without the words yet. He followed it. Down past the fallen signal head. Through a gap in the concrete. Where the rebar showed its ribs. Into a service room. It looked like a junkyard and a prayer had shaken hands. Bulbs hung from wires like tired fruit. Copper ran across the walls and the ceiling in loops and knots. All of it feeding into a makeshift rig. Half pit boy, half ham set, half something that looked like it had no business working at all. And beside it sat a ghoul woman, skin gone to parchment, hair thin to a memory, eyes bright and busy, like she'd just been interrupted mid-thought. One hand on the tuner, the other holding a stub of chalk, worn down to the last breath. On the wall beside her were lines, not cracks, writing. Square, careful letters marched in rows from knee-high to shoulder. Phrases, fragments, each one separated by a short mark like a tally. He didn't recognize them all. I did, when he repeated them to me. 308. Still here. Still listening. If the quiet stays kind. My own words, copied onto a tunnel file. One line at a time. He said she noticed him, but didn't startle. Just nodded towards the rig. Shh, she said. He's on. He listened. All he heard was static, with a bit of teeth in it. He told her it was just a signal that anybody with a working antenna and bad judgment could pick up. She smiled in a way that wasn't really arguing. I prayed once, she said. And this is what answered. Others can borrow it, but it's mine. On the strap of her satchel, he saw an old responder's badge. The name had been scratched out. In its place, carved with something sharp and patient, it just said, listener. He asked if she'd been with them. She shook her head. Never made it that far. But I liked the idea. Somebody running towards trouble on purpose. I just listened to it instead. She turned back to the wall, waiting. Static rolled, caught, broke into a phrase. One of mine, from some forgotten night. She wrote it down, exactly as she heard it. Slow, deliberate. Every letter, a small act of faith. That sound could be turned back into a shape. He went back a week later. Brought food this time. Nothing fancy. Canned corn, stale cram, a bit of boiled water he'd convinced into calling itself tea. She'd moved some things around, wires tightened, a plank bolted to the wall at a careful angle. Above it, in that same square handwriting, "For him who speaks." On the shelf, a couple of old batteries, 2 bottle caps he suspected she couldn't spare, and a folded scrap of paper that just said, "Thank you." He asked if she thought if I'd ever see it. She shrugged. "Doesn't matter," she said. "You leave some things where they belong. They make the room honest." He pointed at the writing, asked why she copied it. She tapped the chalk against her lip, thinking. "What if he forgets?" she said. "What if one day he needs his own words back?" The thought seemed to comfort her, as if the idea that someone up there might be as lost as she was, making the whole arrangement fairer. On the 3rd visit, he brought a wind-up flashlight. She cranked it while she listened, beam skimming over the wall, making the sentences seem to move. He noticed the little marks at the end of some lines, tiny numbers, dates maybe, and a small X. It was for when I had said the same phrase again on a different night. Near the floor, where the earlier writing began, he saw something else carved into the tile itself, not written on top of it. A name, mostly worn, just enough to guess at it. Responder badge. Half-gone name. A tunnel that didn't lead anywhere important. If she ever had a life above the rails, the Wasteland had taken the edges off it. And all that remained was the listening. He tried one night to talk her out. Told her about Flatwoods, about Foundation. Places with light that you didn't have to build by hand. Places where another heart in a room wasn't a rumor carried by wires. She listened the way that she listened to the radio. Head tilted. Polite. Half of her attention already somewhere he couldn't follow. "Up there," she said. "The quiet is mean. It pretends to be noise. Down here, it's honest. If I'm alone, I know it." He asked if she was ever afraid. She looked at the rig. "He talks," she said. And I answer, "That's 2. 2 is more than afraid." When he left, he turned on his own little hand radio. More habit than hope. He spun past nothing, and nothing, and more of the same. Then he heard his own name rise out of the static, in a voice that sounded almost like mine. Not a sentence, just that. Said the way you would say someone's name when you want them to stay. He didn't tell me that part at first. Kept it back like you do with strange things, to see if they fade. They didn't. Months later, curiosity and guilt pushed him back to M-63. The tunnel recognized him. Same drip into the same pan. Same hum against the leaning walls. The maintenance room was still wired. Still improbable. The chair by the rig was empty. On the wall, in fresher chalk than the rest, one more line waited, where her hand must have stopped. Still listening. "You said you would be back." The responder's badge was gone. So was the satchel. On the nail where the badge had hung, there was a small tuning knob, smoothed by 1,000 worried fingers. He touched a lunchbox. Said it vibrated. Not much. Just enough to make his skin say, "This isn't done yet." The rig shouldn't have worked anymore. No real power left in the scrap batteries. No clean connection in the web of repairs. But somewhere inside the static, he heard a faint echo. Not words, just a cadence of a familiar sign-off, chewed by the distance, stubbornly refusing to die. He left some food on the shelf, and a flashlight by the chalk tin, and climbed out of the tunnel into a sky that had never heard of either of them. And that's where this part of the story ends. Mine keeps going, because now I know she was there, down under Morgantown, at the bottom of a number on a wall, aiming every night at a voice that didn't even know it was being aimed at. I think about her when the board flickers and the output meter sinks so low it looks like it's given up. I wonder if, all this time, I thought I was talking into the dark, and really, I was talking to her. Maybe that's what faith is, here in the Wasteland. Not certainty, just choosing one signal and deciding it chose you back. Atmosphere does strange things to radio. Bends it, pulls it, makes it arrive where it had no right to be. I don't know if that's science, or something we haven't named yet, but I like the idea that somewhere a woman sat in a dead tunnel and the world bent a little so my voice could find her. And I like the idea that by listening that hard, she bent it back. You've been listening to Midnight in the Wasteland. I'm Nightwatch. Still here. Still listening. If you ever find M-63, if you see chalk on tile and a small bone tuner catching whatever light is left, leave a word behind. Doesn't have to be much. Your name is enough. Somebody, somewhere, might be making a wall out of what you say. I'll be back tomorrow, if the quiet stays kind. Until then, don't be too sure the silence isn't listening back.